The lantern swung from Vincent Keller's calloused hand as he pushed open the barn door, expecting nothing more than the familiar scent of hay and the soft nickering of his horses. But instead, he heard the sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the darkness above. His body went rigid, every instinct honed from years on the frontier telling him something was wrong. The light from his lantern cut through the shadows, and there, pressed against the far wall of the hayloft, was a woman with wide, terrified eyes and clothes torn at the sleeves. "Don't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please don't send me back." Vincent held perfectly still, his free hand hovering near the revolver at his hip more from habit than threat. The woman looked like she had been through hell. Her dark auburn hair hung in tangled waves around her face, and even from this distance he could see the bruises mottling her pale skin. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, and the fear radiating from her was so palpable it made his chest tighten. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said slowly, keeping his voice low and steady. "Are you injured?" She shook her head, but the movement was jerky and uncertain. Her fingers clutched at the wooden beam beside her as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Vincent could see now that her dress, once probably a decent calico print, was covered in dust and what looked like dried blood on the hem. "How long have you been in my barn?" he asked. "Since this morning," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I saw you leave at dawn and I thought I could hide just for a little while, just until they stopped looking, but then you came back and I did not know what to do. I am sorry. I am so sorry for trespassing." Vincent set the lantern down on a hay bale and held up both hands to show he meant no harm. "Who's looking for you?" The woman's face crumpled, and for a moment he thought she might cry, but she pulled herself together with visible effort. "My husband, former husband. I do not know what he is anymore, but he will kill me if he finds me. He has men searching all through Yankton." Yankton, South Dakota in the year 1878 was not a large town, but it was big enough that a woman could disappear if she knew where to hide. Vincent had been running his small ranch on the outskirts for 3 years now, ever since he had saved enough money working cattle drives and doing odd jobs to buy the land. He kept to himself mostly, preferring the company of his horses to most people, but he was not the kind of man who could turn away someone in genuine need. "Come down from there," he said. "You look like you haven't eaten in days." The woman hesitated, clearly weighing whether she could trust him. Vincent could not blame her for being cautious. He was a stranger, and if she had been running from a violent man, she had every reason to be wary of all men. "My name is Vincent Keller," he offered. "I own this ranch. I live alone, no wife, no hired hands. If you need a place to hide, you can stay here tonight at least. Get some food and you rest, and we can figure out what to do in the morning." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she slowly made her way down the ladder from the loft, moving carefully as if every muscle ached. When she reached the ground, Vincent could see just how small she was, barely reaching his shoulder. Up close, the bruises were even worse. One eye was ringed with purple and yellow, and there were finger-shaped marks on her throat that made his jaw clench. "I'm Rose," she said quietly. "Rose Anderson. At least that was my name before I married. I do not want his name anymore." "Rose," Vincent repeated, and the name felt right somehow. "Come on. The house isn't much, but it's warm and I've got stew left from dinner." He picked up his lantern and gestured for her to follow him. Rose glanced back at the barn as if memorizing her escape route, then fell into step behind him. The walk to the house was short, just 50 yards across the yard, but Vincent could hear her labored breathing. Whatever she had been through, it had taken everything out of her. Inside, Vincent lit the lamps and stirred up the fire in the stove while Rose stood uncertainly near the door. His house was simple but clean. just 2 rooms with a kitchen and living area in one and a bedroom in the other. He had built most of it himself, and while it lacked a woman's touch, it was sturdy and functional. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the wooden table. "I'll heat up the stew." Rose lowered herself into a chair as if she expected it to collapse beneath her. Her hands were shaking, Vincent noticed, and she kept glancing at the windows as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. He ladled stew into a bowl and set it in front of her along with a hunk of bread. "Eat," he said. "Take your time." She did not need to be told twice. Rose picked up the spoon and began eating with the desperate hunger of someone who had not had a decent meal in far too long. Vincent busied himself making coffee, giving her space and time to settle. He had 1,000 questions, but he could wait. Whatever her story was, it could keep until she had some food in her belly and felt safe enough to talk. When she finally pushed the empty bowl away, color had returned to her cheeks, and some of the terror had faded from her eyes. Vincent set a cup of coffee in front of her and took a seat across the table. "Thank you," Rose said, her voice stronger now. "I cannot remember the last time someone showed me kindness. You want to tell me what happened?" Vincent asked. "You don't have to if you're not ready, but if someone's hunting you, I should know what I'm dealing with." Rose wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, as if drawing warmth from it. "I married Thomas Ashford 2 years ago. He seemed like a good man at first, a successful businessman from Sioux City. But after the wedding, everything changed. He became controlling, jealous, violent. I tried to leave once before, and he found me and brought me back. The punishment for that was worse than anything that came before." Her voice was matter of fact, but Vincent could see the pain in her eyes. He had known men like Thomas Ashford, men who used their fists to feel powerful, who believed they owned their wives like property. "What made you run this time?" he asked. "He told me he was going to kill me," Rose said simply. Not in anger, but calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. "He said I had embarrassed him one too many times, that I was worthless, and that he would be better off without me. I knew he meant it. So that night, while he was drunk and passed out, I took what little money I could find and I ran. I have been running for 4 days, hiding in barns and abandoned buildings, staying off the roads. I thought I was far enough away, but this afternoon I saw 2 of his men in town. They were asking questions, showing people my description. 'How did you end up here?' Vincent asked. 'I needed to hide somewhere outside of town, somewhere they would not think to look. Your ranch seemed quiet, isolated. I thought I could just stay in the barn for one night and then move on, but I was so tired I fell asleep. When I woke up and heard you coming, I did not know what to do.' Vincent leaned back in his chair, considering. If Thomas Ashford had men searching Yankton, it was only a matter of time before they widened their search to the surrounding ranches. But Vincent also knew that Rose had nowhere else to go, and sending her back out into the night would be as good as signing her death warrant. "You can stay here," he said. "In the house, I'll sleep in the barn." Rose's eyes widened. "I cannot ask you to do that. You have already done too much." "You're not asking, I'm offering," Vincent said firmly. "The barn's not so bad this time of year. I've slept in worse places. You need rest, real rest, and you need to be somewhere safe. Tomorrow we can figure out a more permanent solution, but tonight you're staying here." For the first time since he had found her, Rose's expression softened. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. For all you know, I could be lying." "You're not lying," Vincent said. "I've seen enough in my life to recognize the truth when I hear it. And even if I didn't, no one deserves to be beaten and hunted like an animal. What your husband did to you is wrong, and I won't be part of sending you back to that." Tears welled up in Rose's eyes, and this time she did not try to hold them back. They spilled down her cheeks in silent streams, and Vincent felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. He was not used to emotional displays, had spent most of his adult life keeping people at arm's length, but something about this woman's suffering called to something deep inside him. "Thank you," Rose whispered. "I do not know how I will ever repay you." "Don't worry about that now," Vincent said gruffly. "Just get some rest. The bedroom's through that door. I'll be in the barn if you need anything, and I'll have my rifle with me. If anyone comes around, I'll know." Rose stood on shaky legs and moved toward the bedroom door, then paused. "Vincent, what if they come tomorrow? What if they find me?" "Then they'll have to go through me first," Vincent said, and he meant every word. After Rose had closed the bedroom door behind her, Vincent gathered up a blanket and his rifle and headed back out to the barn. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of hay and horse and the distant promise of rain. He climbed up to the loft where Rose had been hiding and settled himself on the hay, positioning himself where he could see both the house and the road leading up to his property. Sleep did not come easily. Vincent's mind kept replaying the fear in Rose's eyes, the bruises on her skin, the desperate whisper of "Please don't send me back." He had seen violence before, had participated in his share of it during his younger years, but there was something about violence against someone defenseless that made his blood boil. Thomas Ashford was a coward who preyed on those weaker than himself, and Vincent had no respect for cowards. As the hours passed and the moon traced its arc across the sky, Vincent found himself thinking about his own past. He had been born in Missouri to a farming family, the youngest of 4 sons. When the war came, his older brothers had all enlisted, and 3 of them had never come home. Vincent had been too young to fight, but by the time he was old enough, the war was over and his parents were dead, taken by fever within months of each other. He had drifted west, working whatever jobs he could find, until he had finally scraped together enough money for this small piece of land. He had never planned on staying in Yankton permanently. It was supposed to be a temporary stop, a place to rest and resupply before moving on. But 3 years had turned into a kind of home, and the isolation suited him, or at least it had until tonight. Now, lying in his barn with a rifle across his lap and a terrified woman sleeping in his house, Vincent felt the first stirrings of something he had not felt in years, the need to protect someone other than himself. Dawn broke cold and gray, with heavy clouds rolling in from the west. Vincent climbed down from the loft and went to check on his horses, giving them fresh water and hay before heading to the house. He knocked softly on his own door before entering, not wanting to startle Rose. She was already awake, standing near the stove with uncertain hands. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "I found coffee and eggs and thought I could make breakfast. It is the least I can do." "You don't have to do that," Vincent said, but the smell of frying eggs made his stomach rumble. He could not remember the last time someone had cooked for him. "I want to," Rose insisted. "I need to feel useful. These past few days I have felt so helpless, like I have no control over anything. Cooking is something I can do." Vincent nodded and sat down at the table, watching as Rose moved around his kitchen with quiet efficiency. Despite everything she had been through, there was a grace to her movements, a quiet strength that he found himself admiring. She plated the eggs and toast and set them on the table, then poured fresh coffee for both of them. "This is good," Vincent said after his first bite. "Thank you." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Rose spoke. "I have been thinking about what to do next. I cannot stay here forever. It is not fair to you, and eventually Thomas will find me if I stay in one place too long." "Where would you go?" Vincent asked. "Do you have family somewhere?" Rose shook her head. "My parents died when I was young. I have an aunt in San Francisco, but I have not seen her in years. I do not even know if she is still alive." "San Francisco is a long way from here," Vincent said, "and it takes money to get there." "I know," Rose said quietly. "I have been trying to think of a way to earn enough for a train ticket, but I cannot exactly go into town and look for work, not with Thomas's men searching for me." Vincent drummed his fingers on the table, thinking, "What if you stayed here for a while? Not in the house necessarily, but on the ranch. I could use help with the horses and the land. It is not much, and I cannot pay you a lot, but I could give you room and board and save up enough money for your train ticket. It might take a few months, but it would keep you safe and give you time to figure out your next move." Rose stared at him as if he had just offered her the moon. "You would do that? Let me stay and work for you." "I could use the help," Vincent said, which was true. Running a ranch alone was back-breaking work, and there were always tasks that fell by the wayside because he simply did not have enough hours in the day. And this way you would not have to go into town where someone might recognize you. You could stay out of sight until things cool down. "What if Thomas comes here looking for me?" "Then we will deal with it," Vincent said. "But I think if you keep your head down and stay on the ranch, the chances of him finding you are slim. He is probably searching the town and the main roads. He would not think to look at every isolated ranch in the territory." Rose bit her lip, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "All right. If you are sure you want to do this, I will stay and work for you. I am a hard worker, I promise. I may not know much about ranching, but I can learn." "I'll teach you," Vincent said. "We'll start today. But first, I want you to stay inside while I ride into town. I need to see what I can find out about this Thomas Ashford and his men. The more I know about what we are dealing with, the better prepared we will be." "Be careful," Rose said, and the concern in her voice made something warm unfurl in Vincent's chest. Vincent rode into Yankton mid-morning, tying his horse outside the general store. The town was bustling with activity, wagons rolling down the main street and people hurrying about their business. He kept his hat pulled low and his eyes open, looking for any sign of strangers asking questions. Inside the store, he found Mrs. Henley behind the counter, a plump woman with sharp eyes and sharper ears. If anyone knew what was happening in town, it would be her. "Morning, Mr. Keller," she said cheerfully. "Haven't seen you in a few weeks. Need supplies?" "Just a few things," Vincent said, picking up a bag of flour and some dried beans. "Been busy with the ranch. Town seems busier than usual." "Oh, you noticed that, did you?" Mrs. Henley leaned in conspiratorially. "We have had some strangers in town the past few days. Rough-looking men asking about a woman. They say she is a runaway wife, mentally unstable, dangerous to herself. Her husband is beside himself with worry, they say." Vincent kept his expression neutral. "Is that so? They find her?" "Not yet," Mrs. Henley said. "Though between you and me, I don't believe a word of their story. Those men don't look like they are searching for someone out of concern. They look like hunters tracking prey. Sheriff Dalton told them to move along if they could not provide proof of a crime, but they are still hanging around the saloon bothering folks." "The husband here too?" Vincent asked. "Arrived yesterday on the afternoon train. Thomas Ashford says his name is, staying at the hotel. He has been making speeches about his poor disturbed wife and how worried he is, but something about him does not sit right. Too smooth, if you know what I mean." Vincent knew exactly what she meant. Men like Ashford were skilled manipulators, able to present a respectable face to the world while hiding their true nature behind closed doors. "I appreciate the information, Mrs. Henley. If you hear anything else, I would be obliged if you would let me know." "You thinking of helping if this woman shows up?" Mrs. Henley asked shrewdly. "Just thinking it is always good to know what is happening in town," Vincent said diplomatically. He paid for his supplies and left the store, his mind working through this new information. Thomas Ashford was in Yankton, which meant Rose had been right to be terrified. The man was not going to give up easily. Vincent needed to be prepared for the possibility that Ashford and his men might eventually make their way out to his ranch. On his way back, Vincent stopped at the blacksmith to pick up some nails he had ordered the week before. Jake Morrison, the blacksmith, was a solid man who minded his own business, which Vincent appreciated. "Heard you talking to Mrs. Henley," Jake said as he wrapped up the nails. "You thinking what I'm thinking about that runaway wife story?" "What are you thinking?" Vincent asked. "That if a woman runs from her husband, she probably has good reason," Jake said bluntly. "My sister was married to a man who beat her. She tried to leave 3 times before she finally got away. I know the signs. Those bruises they are describing as falls and accidents. I have heard those excuses before." Vincent studied the blacksmith with new respect. "If someone were hiding that woman, would you blame them?" "I would help them," Jake said firmly. "And if you know where she is, you tell her she has got friends in this town, even if she does not know it. Not everyone believes Ashford's lies." Vincent nodded, filing that information away. It was good to know that if things went bad, he might have allies. He loaded his supplies onto his horse and rode back to the ranch, his mind already working on plans and contingencies. When he arrived home, he found Rose in the barn, carefully brushing down one of his horses. She looked up as he entered, her expression anxious. "How did it go?" she asked. "Your husband is in town," Vincent said, not seeing the point in sugar-coating it. "He arrived yesterday. He has got men with him, and they are telling everyone you are mentally unstable and dangerous to yourself." Rose's face went pale, but she did not collapse or cry. Instead, she squared her shoulders and kept brushing the horse with steady strokes. "That is what he told people the last time I tried to leave. He had a doctor declare me hysterical and unfit to make my own decisions. It is how he justified locking me in our house for 3 months." The casual way she said it, as if being imprisoned by her own husband were just another inconvenience, made Vincent's hands clench into fists. "He is not getting near you," he said. "I'll make sure of that." "You cannot fight all of them," Rose said quietly. "Thomas has money and influence. He can make life very difficult for anyone who crosses him." "Let him try," Vincent said. "This is my land and I decide who is welcome on it. Now, how about I show you how to properly saddle a horse? If you are going to be working on a ranch, you need to know how to ride." Over the next few weeks, Rose settled into life on the ranch with surprising ease. Vincent taught her how to care for the horses, mend fences, and handle the chickens he kept for eggs. She proved to be a quick learner with a willingness to tackle even the dirtiest jobs without complaint. In return, she cooked meals that were far better than anything Vincent had made for himself in years, and she brought a warmth to the house that he had not realized was missing. They fell into a comfortable routine. Vincent would wake before dawn and do the morning chores while Rose prepared breakfast. After eating, they would work together on whatever tasks needed doing, whether it was repairing the barn roof or breaking in a new horse. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying the companionable silence. Vincent found himself looking forward to these evenings more than he cared to admit. Rose had a quick wit and a sharp mind, and their conversations ranged from the practical to the philosophical. She told him about her childhood in Iowa, her dreams of becoming a teacher before her parents died and left her alone. He told her about his brothers who never came home from the war, and how sometimes he still expected to see them walking up the road. It was during one of these evening conversations, about 3 weeks after Rose had arrived, that Vincent realized he was falling in love with her. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He was sitting across from her at the kitchen table, watching the firelight play across her features as she laughed at something he had said. And suddenly, he could not imagine his life without her in it. The thought terrified him. Vincent had carefully constructed a life of solitude, convincing himself he was better off alone. Getting attached to someone meant risking loss, and he had lost enough people in his life. But Rose had somehow slipped past all his defenses, and now he found himself wanting things he had thought he would never want. A partner, a companion, a future that involved more than just himself and his horses. He said nothing that night, or the nights that followed. Rose was still healing, still processing her own trauma, and the last thing Vincent wanted was to burden her with his feelings when she was depending on him for safety and shelter. So he kept his emotions locked away and focused on making sure she felt secure. But he could not help noticing the small changes in her. The fear that had haunted her eyes when she first arrived was gradually fading, replaced by something softer. She smiled more often, laughed at his terrible jokes, and sometimes he would catch her watching him with an expression he did not dare interpret. One morning in early June, Vincent was working in the corral when he saw a dust cloud on the horizon. 3 riders were approaching the ranch at a steady pace. His stomach tightened with apprehension. Very few people had reason to come out this far, and the timing felt ominous. "Rose," he called toward the house. "Get inside and stay away from the windows." She appeared in the doorway, saw his expression, and immediately disappeared back inside without argument. Vincent retrieved his rifle from the barn and positioned himself near the corral fence, waiting for the riders to arrive. When they got close enough, he recognized 2 of them from descriptions Mrs. Henley had given him. Hard-faced men with guns on their hips and eyes that held no warmth. The 3rd man was older, well-dressed in a suit that looked out of place on a ranch. Thomas Ashford, Vincent presumed. "Help you gentlemen with something," Vincent called out when they were within earshot. The man in the suit dismounted with practiced ease and walked toward Vincent with an affable smile that did not reach his eyes. "I hope so. My name is Thomas Ashford. I am looking for my wife, Rose. I was told she might have been seen in this area." "Don't know anyone by that name," Vincent said flatly. "Are you sure?" Thomas's smile remained fixed. "She is about this tall, auburn hair, very pretty. She has been missing for over a month now. She is not well, you understand, mentally fragile. I am very worried about her." "Like I said, I have not seen anyone matching that description," Vincent repeated. "Now if you will excuse me, I have work to do." One of the other men, a brute with a scar across his cheek, spoke up. "Mind if we look around, just to ease Mr. Ashford's mind?" "Yes, I do mind," Vincent said, his voice hard. "This is private property. You have got no right to search it without the sheriff and a warrant." Thomas's expression shifted, the friendly mask slipping to reveal something cold underneath. "I understand your position, Mr. Keller. I do. But you have to understand mine as well. Rose is my wife. She belongs with me. If someone is hiding her, they are breaking the law. Interfering with a man's right to his own wife is a serious matter. Even if I had seen your wife, which I have not, I would think any woman who ran from her husband probably had good reason," Vincent said. "Might be she does not want to be found." The scarred man's hand moved toward his gun, but Thomas raised a hand to stop him. "Let's not be hasty," he said smoothly. "Mr. Keller, I am a reasonable man. I am willing to pay handsomely for information leading to Rose's return. $500 to anyone who can tell me where she is." "Don't want your money," Vincent said. "And I have told you everything I know, which is nothing. So I will ask you politely one more time to leave my property." Thomas stared at Vincent for a long moment, and Vincent stared right back, his finger resting near the trigger of his rifle. Finally, Thomas nodded and remounted his horse. "Very well," he said. "But I will be keeping an eye on this ranch, Mr. Keller. If my wife happens to show up, I expect to be notified immediately. It would be a shame if anything unfortunate happened to a man who was obstructing justice." "Are you threatening me?" Vincent asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Just stating facts," Thomas said. "Come on, men. We have other places to search." The three riders wheeled their horses and rode off, but Vincent noticed they did not head back toward town. Instead, they stopped about a quarter-mile down the road, settling in as if planning to watch the ranch. Vincent waited until they were out of earshot, then headed back to the house. Rose was standing just inside the door, her face ashen. "He is not going to give up," she said. "He will keep coming back, keep watching until he finds a way to get to me." "Not on my watch," Vincent said firmly. "But we need to be smart about this. They are watching the ranch now, which means we need to be extra careful. No going outside during the day where they can see you. We will do the chores together early in the morning before sunrise and after sunset." "This is not sustainable," Rose said. "I cannot hide forever. Maybe I should just leave, try to make it to another town." "And how would you do that with them watching the road?" Vincent asked. "Rose, I know this is hard, but running is not the answer. Not right now. We need to wait them out, make them think you are not here. Eventually they will have to leave or the sheriff will make them move on." Rose wrapped her arms around herself, looking small and vulnerable. Without thinking, Vincent pulled her into an embrace, feeling her tense for a moment before she relaxed against him. "I won't let him take you," Vincent murmured into her hair. "I promise." He felt her arms come up around his waist, holding on as if he were the only solid thing in a shifting world. They stood like that for a long moment, and Vincent felt something shift between them, some invisible line being crossed. When Rose finally pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me. You could get hurt or worse." "Thomas is not a man who forgives people who cross him." "I'm doing this because it is the right thing to do," Vincent said. "And because somewhere along the way you stopped being a stranger hiding in my barn and became someone I care about." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Rose's breath caught, and for a moment Vincent thought he had said too much, pushed too hard. But then she reached up and cupped his face with her hand, her thumb brushing across his cheek. "I care about you too," she whispered. "More than I should. More than is probably wise given everything happening." Vincent covered her hand with his own. "Nothing about this situation is wise, but that does not make it any less real." They stood there in the doorway, the morning sun streaming in around them, and Vincent felt the last of his carefully constructed walls crumble. He leaned down slowly, giving Rose every chance to pull away, and when she did not, he kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, tentative and questioning, but it sent heat flooding through Vincent's veins. Rose's lips were soft beneath his, and when she sighed and pressed closer, he deepened the kiss, one hand coming up to tangle in her hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "I've wanted you to," Rose said. "But I was afraid of what it would mean, afraid of bringing you into my mess even more than you already are." "You're not a mess," Vincent said firmly. "You're brave and strong and kind, and any man would be lucky to have your affection, including me." Rose smiled, and it transformed her whole face. "You really believe that?" "I know it," Vincent said. They spent the rest of the day inside, staying away from the windows as Thomas and his men maintained their vigil down the road. Vincent found himself hyper-aware of Rose's presence, the way she moved around the house, the sound of her humming as she prepared dinner. Everything felt sharper, more intense, now that they had acknowledged what was growing between them. That night, after a dinner eaten by lamplight with the curtains drawn, Rose took Vincent's hand and led him to sit by the fire. "Tell me about your dreams," she said. "Not the ones you have at night, but the ones you have for your life. What do you want, Vincent Keller?" No one had ever asked him that question before. Vincent was so used to just surviving, getting through each day, that he had not allowed himself to dream in years. But looking at Rose in the firelight, feeling the warmth of her hand in his, the dreams came flooding back. "I want to build something lasting," he said slowly. "This ranch, it is small now, but I want to expand it. Breed good horses, maybe run some cattle. I want to build a real house, something solid that will stand for generations. And I want to share it with someone. I spent so many years alone, convincing myself I was fine with solitude, but I was lying to myself. I want what my parents had before the war took everything away. A partner, a family, a home that is more than just walls and a roof." "That sounds beautiful," Rose said softly. "I want that too. I thought marriage would give me that, but Thomas twisted everything good into something ugly. He made me feel like I was worthless, like I deserved the pain he caused. It has taken me weeks to start believing that maybe he was wrong, that maybe I do deserve happiness and kindness and love." "You deserve all of that and more," Vincent said fiercely. "Thomas Ashford is a liar and a coward. Don't let his poison stay in your mind." Rose leaned her head on Vincent's shoulder. "Being here with you has helped more than you know. You make me feel safe in a way I have not felt in years. You make me feel like maybe I could have those dreams again." They sat by the fire long into the night, talking about everything and nothing, building dreams together in words that felt more real than anything Vincent had experienced in years. When Rose finally stood to go to bed, she kissed him good night, a sweet lingering kiss that promised more to come. The next morning, Vincent woke before dawn as usual and looked out the window to check on the watchers. The spot where Thomas and his men had been camping was empty. For a moment, hope surged in his chest, but then he saw fresh tracks leading around the back of his property. They had not given up. They had just changed tactics. Vincent spent the day on high alert, keeping his rifle close and checking the perimeter regularly. Rose stayed inside, but he could see the strain wearing on her. Being trapped indoors was wearing on both of them, and Vincent knew they could not sustain this indefinitely. 3 more days passed in tense waiting. Thomas's men were playing a game of cat and mouse, disappearing for hours only to reappear at random times, always watching, always waiting. On the 4th day, Vincent rode into town to speak with Sheriff Dalton. The sheriff was a grizzled man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. He listened to Vincent's story without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. "I had a feeling something was off about Ashford's story," Dalton said when Vincent finished. "But without proof of a crime, my hands are tied. A man has a legal right to search for his wife, and if she is not willing to come forward and file charges, there is not much I can do." "What if she did come forward?" Vincent asked. "Would you protect her?" "I would do my job," Dalton said carefully. "But you have to understand the law favors husbands in these matters. Even if she filed charges, it would be her word against his, and Ashford has money for lawyers. The most I could do is order him to leave her alone, but enforcing that order would be another matter entirely." Vincent's jaw clenched in frustration. "So you are saying she has no recourse? She just has to keep running for the rest of her life?" "I'm saying the system is not set up to protect women in her situation," Dalton said bluntly. "It is not right, but it is the reality. My advice: if you are serious about protecting this woman, you might want to think about getting her somewhere Ashford can't reach her. Out of the territory entirely." That takes time and money, Vincent said. Then you better start planning, Dalton said. Because men like Ashford don't give up. He will keep pushing until he gets what he wants or until someone makes him stop permanently. And I hope you are not thinking what I think you are thinking, because killing a man, even a man like Ashford, will land you on the wrong end of a rope. Vincent left the sheriff's office feeling more frustrated than ever. The law was supposed to protect people, but it was failing Rose completely. He rode back to the ranch deep in thought, trying to figure out their next move. When he arrived home, Rose was waiting for him with an anxious expression. "How did it go?" "Not great," Vincent admitted. "The sheriff says without proof of abuse and without you being willing to press charges, there is not much he can do. And even if you did press charges, the law favors husbands. It would be an uphill battle." Rose nodded as if she had expected this. "I told you Thomas has the system on his side. Men like him always do." "The sheriff suggested getting you out of the territory," Vincent said. "Somewhere Ashford cannot follow, maybe back east or further west to California." "That still takes money," Rose said. "Money I don't have and cannot earn while I am trapped here." "I have some saved," Vincent said. "Not a lot, but enough for a train ticket and some extra to help you get settled somewhere new." Rose stared at him. "You would do that? Give up your savings to help me escape?" "I told you, I am not going to let him get you," Vincent said. "If that means using every penny I have, so be it. Money can be earned again. Your life cannot." Rose crossed the room and took both of his hands in hers. "I cannot accept that. You have worked too hard for this ranch, for the life you are building. I will not take that away from you." "Then what do you suggest?" Vincent asked. "Because I am running out of ideas." Rose was quiet for a long moment, her brow furrowed in thought. "What if we turned the tables on Thomas? What if instead of waiting for him to make a move, we made him show his true colors in public? If enough people saw what he is really like, his money and influence would not matter as much." "How would we do that?" Vincent asked. "I don't know yet," Rose admitted. "But there has to be a way. Thomas is careful about his public image. That is how men like him get away with what they do. They are charming in public and monsters in private. If we could force him to show the monster in front of witnesses, people might finally believe the truth about him." It was a risky plan, one that required Rose to expose herself to danger, but Vincent had to admit it had merit. If they could get Thomas to reveal his violent nature in front of multiple witnesses, including the sheriff, it might be enough to discredit him and get him run out of town. Over the next few days, they refined the plan. Rose would go into town, making herself visible but staying in public places where there were lots of people around. Vincent would be nearby but out of sight, along with some of the townspeople who had expressed sympathy for Rose's situation. When Thomas inevitably confronted her, they would be ready to step in if things turned violent, and there would be plenty of witnesses to whatever happened. It was far from foolproof, but it was the best option they had. On a Saturday morning, when the town would be at its busiest with people coming in for market day, they put the plan into motion. Rose dressed in one of her better dresses, one Vincent had purchased for her on a previous trip to town, and arranged her hair carefully. She looked beautiful but nervous, and Vincent wanted nothing more than to tell her she did not have to do this, that they would find another way. But he knew she needed to take this stand, needed to stop running and face her fear head-on. "You ready?" he asked as they prepared to leave. "No," Rose said honestly, "but I am doing it anyway. I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of giving Thomas power over me. It ends today one way or another." They rode into Yankton together with Rose sitting behind Vincent on his horse. When they reached the edge of town, Rose dismounted and straightened her dress. "I will be watching," Vincent said. Jake the blacksmith and Mrs. Henley and a few others know what is happening. They will be watching too. The second things look bad, we will step in." "I know," Rose said. She reached up and kissed him, a kiss that felt like both a promise and a goodbye. "Thank you for everything, Vincent. No matter what happens today, I want you to know that these past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life." "Don't talk like that," Vincent said gruffly. "This is going to work, and then you will have a whole lifetime of happy days ahead of you. With me, if you will have me." Rose's eyes shone with tears, but she was smiling. "I would like nothing more." Vincent watched as Rose walked into town, her spine straight and her head high despite the fear he knew she must be feeling. He tied his horse outside the saloon and positioned himself where he could see the main street without being too obvious. Jake Morrison was standing outside his smithy, pretending to work but keeping watch. Mrs. Henley was visible through the window of her store, and Vincent spotted a few other friendly faces stationed strategically around the street. For the first 20 minutes, nothing happened. Rose walked slowly down the main street, stopping to look in shop windows and greeting people politely. A few folks recognized her from the descriptions that had been circulated and gave her sympathetic looks, but no one caused trouble. Then, Thomas Ashford emerged from the hotel. Vincent's whole body tensed as he watched Thomas spot Rose. The man's expression went from surprise to fury to cold calculation in the space of a heartbeat. He strode down the hotel steps and across the street, his 2 hired men falling into step behind him. "Rose," Thomas called out, his voice carrying across the street. "Thank God. I have been so worried about you, darling." Rose turned to face him, and Vincent could see her trembling even from a distance, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Stay away from me, Thomas." "Now, darling, do not be like that," Thomas said, closing the distance between them. People on the street were stopping to watch the drama unfold. "You have been gone for over a month. I have been beside myself with worry. You know you are not well. You need to come home where I can take care of you." "I am not going anywhere with you," Rose said, louder now. "I know what kind of care you provide, and I would rather die than go back to that." Thomas's mask of concern slipped for just a moment, revealing the anger beneath. "You are embarrassing yourself, and me. Stop this nonsense and come back to the hotel. We can discuss this in private." "No," Rose said firmly. "I am done with private discussions. I am done with you hurting me behind closed doors and lying about it to the world. Everyone here should know what you really are, Thomas. You are not a concerned husband. You are a monster who beats his wife and calls it love." A murmur ran through the gathered crowd. Thomas's face flushed with anger, but he kept his voice level. "You see how she is," he said, addressing the crowd. "Delusional, hysterical. She needs medical care, not encouragement in these fantasies." "They are not fantasies," Rose said, and she began unbuttoning the high collar of her dress. Vincent felt his heart stop as she revealed the finger-shaped bruises on her throat, still visible despite the weeks that had passed. "These are from his hands. He choked me until I nearly passed out, then told me he was going to kill me. That is why I ran." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Thomas's expression darkened dangerously. "Those bruises could be from anything. You probably gave them to yourself for attention. You always were dramatic." "I was dramatic," Rose's voice rose. "I was the problem, not the man who locked me in a room for 3 months, not the man who broke my ribs and told the doctor I fell down the stairs, not the man who threatened to kill me if I ever tried to leave again." "That is enough," Thomas snarled, his facade finally cracking. He lunged forward and grabbed Rose's arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to make her cry out. "You are coming with me right now, and when I get you alone, you are going to regret every word you just said." That was all Vincent needed to hear. He stepped out from his position and crossed the street in long strides. "Let go of her, now." Thomas looked up, his eyes narrowing when he recognized Vincent. "This does not concern you, Keller. This is between me and my wife." "She is not your wife anymore," Vincent said. "She is under my protection, and you need to take your hands off her before I make you." Thomas's hired men moved forward, but Jake Morrison and two other men from town stepped up beside Vincent, making it clear whose side they were on. Sheriff Dalton also appeared, having been alerted by Mrs. Henley. "What is going on here?" the sheriff demanded. "This man is assaulting my wife," Thomas said quickly. "I demand you arrest him." "I saw you grab her arm hard enough to hurt her," Dalton said flatly. "That looks like assault to me. And I heard what she said about the abuse. Those are serious accusations, Ashford." "She is mentally unstable," Thomas insisted. "She does not know what she is saying. I have a doctor's certificate stating as much." "I am not unstable," Rose said, her voice shaking but clear. "I am a woman who was abused by her husband and finally found the courage to leave. Every word I said is true. Thomas Ashford beats women. He is a coward who preys on those smaller and weaker than himself." "You are going to regret those words," Thomas hissed, taking a threatening step toward Rose. But Vincent moved between them, his hand resting on his revolver. "Touch her and it will be the last thing you ever do," Vincent said quietly. The two men stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Sheriff Dalton intervened. "Ashford, I am going to have to ask you to step away from the lady. And I think it would be best if you and your men left Yankton. We don't take kindly to men who hurt women in this town." "You have no authority to run me out of town," Thomas protested. "I have not been charged with any crime." "Not yet," Dalton said. "But if this lady wants to press charges for assault and battery, I will be happy to take her statement. And based on what I just witnessed, I would be inclined to believe her testimony." "She is my wife," Thomas said through gritted teeth. "I have a legal right to discipline her." "You have the right to lead a horse to water, but not to beat a woman half to death," Dalton shot back. "Now, you can leave town peacefully, or I can find a reason to lock you up until a judge arrives. Your choice." Thomas looked around at the hostile faces of the townspeople and realized he had lost. His carefully constructed public image lay in ruins, destroyed by Rose's courage in speaking the truth. He jerked his head at his men. "This is not over," he said to Rose. "You are still legally my wife. I will find a judge who understands a husband's rights." "You do that," Rose said, "but I will fight you every step of the way, and I will keep telling everyone the truth about what you did to me. Your reputation is destroyed, Thomas. No respectable woman will ever marry into your family once word gets out about how you treat wives." For a moment, Vincent thought Thomas might actually strike Rose despite all the witnesses. The man's face was contorted with rage, his hands clenched into fists. But then he seemed to get control of himself. He straightened his coat, gave Rose a look of pure hatred, and stalked back toward the hotel with his men following. The moment he was out of sight, Rose's legs gave out. Vincent caught her before she could fall, pulling her into his arms as she began to shake with reaction. Around them, the townspeople were murmuring in shock and sympathy. Mrs. Henley bustled over with a chair. "Sit her down, poor thing." That took more courage than most people have in their whole bodies. Rose sank into the chair, and Vincent knelt beside her, holding her hands. "You did it," he said. "You stood up to him, and everyone saw the truth." "Is it really over?" Rose asked, her voice small. "The worst part is," Vincent said. "He might try to pursue legal action, but his reputation is ruined now. And you have witnesses who will testify to what they saw and heard. He has lost his power over you." Sheriff Dalton approached, his expression sympathetic. "Madam, I am going to need you to come to my office and make a formal statement, and I would suggest you look into getting a legal separation or divorce. It won't be easy, but with what just happened here, you might have a case." Rose nodded wearily. "I will do whatever it takes. I am never going back to him." Vincent helped Rose to her feet and walked with her to the sheriff's office, where she spent the next hour giving a detailed account of the abuse she had suffered during her marriage. Dalton took notes carefully, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. When Rose finally finished, she looked exhausted but also lighter somehow, as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Thank you for believing me," she said to the sheriff. "I have seen enough of life to know when someone is telling the truth," Dalton said gruffly. "You are a brave woman, Mrs. Ashford, or should I say Miss Anderson, Rose Anderson," she said. "I want nothing that connects me to that man ever again." Vincent took Rose back to the ranch, keeping a careful eye on the road behind them to make sure they were not being followed. Thomas and his men had left town on the afternoon train, according to Mrs. Henley, who had made it her business to watch the hotel. But Vincent knew that did not mean the danger was completely over. That night, as they sat by the fire in his house, Rose was quieter than usual. Vincent let her have her silence, understanding that she was processing everything that had happened. Finally, she spoke. "I keep waiting to feel relieved," she said. "I should feel free now, shouldn't I? But all I feel is tired and scared that it is not really over." "It will take time," Vincent said gently. "You cannot live in fear for that long and expect it to disappear overnight, but each day will get a little easier, and I will be here with you every step of the way if you want me to be." Rose looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "Why? Why have you done all this for me? You could have sent me away that first night. You could have told Thomas where I was and collected his reward money. Instead, you risked everything to protect me. I need to understand why." Vincent took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment to lay all his cards on the table. "At first, I helped you because it was the right thing to do. But Rose, somewhere along the way, it stopped being about doing the right thing and started being about you. About who you are and how you make me feel. I am falling in love with you. Hell, I am already in love with you. And I know the timing is terrible and you have been through so much, but I cannot pretend I don't feel it." Rose's breath caught. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "I love you too. I have been afraid to say it, afraid to even think it, because I never thought I could feel this way about anyone after what Thomas did to me. But you have shown me what real love looks like. It is not control or possession or violence. It is kindness and respect and partnership. You have given me back my sense of self-worth. How could I not love you?" Vincent pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the pent-up emotion of the past weeks. Rose kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands tangling in his hair as she pressed closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is fast, and I know you need time to heal, but I want you to know my intentions are serious. When you are ready, whenever that is, I want to make you my wife. The right way, with love and respect and equal partnership." "Yes," Rose said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you. Not right away because you are right. I need time to heal and to legally separate myself from Thomas. But yes, Vincent Keller, I will marry you." They spent that night planning their future, talking about expanding the ranch and the life they would build together. Vincent had never been much of a talker before Rose, but with her, words came easily. They dreamed aloud about the house they would build, the horses they would raise, the children they might have someday when Rose felt ready. The next few months were busy ones. Rose worked with a lawyer in Sioux City to file for divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty. Thomas fought it at first, But when multiple witnesses from Yankton testified to what they had seen and heard, the judge ruled in Rose's favor. The divorce was finalized by September, making Rose a free woman in both name and fact. During this time, Rose and Vincent grew closer than ever. They worked side by side on the ranch, building up the herd and making improvements to the property. Rose proved to have a natural talent with horses, able to gentle even the most skittish animals with patience and kindness. Vincent found himself constantly amazed by her strength and resilience. They married in October of 1878, in a small ceremony at the church in Yankton with Mrs. Henley and Jake Morrison standing as witnesses. Rose wore a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, and Vincent wore his best suit. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives, Vincent felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was what he had been searching for all those lonely years. This was home. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. Rose still had nightmares sometimes, waking up in a panic before remembering she was safe with Vincent. He learned to soothe her gently, to give her space when she needed it and comfort when she wanted it. Slowly, the nightmares became less frequent. They also faced practical challenges as they worked to expand the ranch. A harsh winter in late 1878 tested their resolve, but they weathered it together, taking care of the animals and each other. By spring, they were exhausted but triumphant, having not lost a single horse to the cold. In the summer of 1879, Rose discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified at first, afraid that motherhood would somehow trigger memories of her abusive marriage, but Vincent was there every step of the way, supporting her and reassuring her that she would be an amazing mother. Their son was born in March of 1880, a healthy baby boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's spirit. They named him Samuel, after Vincent's oldest brother who had died in the war. Holding his son for the first time, Vincent felt a fierce, protective love that eclipsed everything he had felt before. This tiny person was counting on him to provide a safe, loving home, and Vincent was determined to do exactly that. Rose took to motherhood with the same strength and grace she brought to everything else. She was patient and loving, determined that their son would never know the kind of fear she had lived with for so long. Vincent often found her singing to Samuel as she rocked him, old lullabies she remembered from her own childhood. 2 years later, they had a daughter, whom they named Elizabeth. She had her mother's auburn hair and a stubborn streak that made both her parents laugh. Samuel was a protective big brother from the start, always wanting to help take care of his baby sister. As the years passed, the ranch prospered. Vincent's reputation for breeding quality horses spread throughout the territory, and people came from as far as Nebraska to buy from him. With Rose managing the business side of things, they were able to expand, buying more land and hiring a couple of hands to help with the work. Rose never forgot where she had come from or how close she had come to losing everything. She made it her mission to help other women who found themselves in situations like hers. She worked with the church to establish a safe house in Yankton, where women fleeing abusive marriages could stay. And she spoke openly about her own experiences, helping to slowly change attitudes about domestic violence. Vincent supported her efforts fully, using his growing influence in the community to advocate for legal changes that would better protect women. It was slow, frustrating work, but they were making a difference, one woman and one family at a time. In 1885, 7 years after that night when Rose had whispered, "Please don't send me back," in his barn, Vincent sat on the porch of their expanded house, watching his children play in the yard. Samuel, now 5, was teaching 3-year-old Elizabeth how to feed the chickens, showing her how to scatter the grain gently so the birds would not be afraid. Rose came out of the house and settled onto the porch swing beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How lucky I am," Vincent said honestly. 7 years ago, I was alone, convinced I was better off that way. Then you stumbled into my life and everything changed. You gave me a reason to build something lasting, a family, a real home. I cannot imagine my life without you and the children." Rose smiled and laced her fingers through his. "I was thinking something similar. 7 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I would either die at Thomas's hands or spend the rest of my life running. But then I found you, or maybe you found me, and you showed me that I deserved love and happiness. You saved my life, Vincent." "We saved each other," Vincent corrected. "You showed me how to open my heart again, how to trust someone enough to let them in. We built this life together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play as the sun began to set over the Dakota prairie. The barn where Rose had hidden that fateful night still stood, now expanded and filled with the horses that were Vincent's pride and joy. The small house Vincent had lived in alone had been transformed into a real home, with Rose's touches everywhere, from the curtains on the windows to the garden blooming in the yard. That night, after the children were tucked into bed, Vincent and Rose sat by the fire as they had so many nights before. Rose was working on some mending while Vincent read through the livestock catalogs, planning for the spring breeding season. It was an ordinary evening, the kind they had shared hundreds of times, but it felt precious because of the journey they had taken to get here. "Rose," Vincent said, setting down his catalog, "do you ever regret it, staying here, marrying me, building this life? Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you had gone to California like you originally planned?" Rose looked up from her mending, surprise evident on her face. "Never. Not for a single moment. California was just an escape, a place to run to because I had nowhere else to go. But this, what we have built here, this is a real life. This is home. You are home. I would not trade this for anything in the world." "Good," Vincent said, relief evident in his voice, "because I cannot imagine my life without you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Rose Keller." "And you are the best thing that ever happened to me," Rose said. She set aside her mending and moved to sit beside him, curling into his side. "You know, sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That I get to wake up every morning next to a man who loves me, who respects me, who treats me as an equal partner. After Thomas, I thought all men were like him. You proved me wrong." "Not all men are like Thomas," Vincent said firmly. "Most men, real men, would never dream of raising a hand to a woman. Thomas was a coward and a bully. You deserved better then, and I am grateful every day that I get to give you better now." They sat by the fire for hours, talking and dreaming as they always had. They discussed expanding the ranch further, maybe buying the adjacent property that had just come up for sale. They talked about their children's futures, the education they would provide, the values they would instill. They talked about growing old together, about the grandchildren they might someday have. As the fire burned down to embers, and the night grew late, Vincent and Rose headed to bed, climbing the stairs hand in hand. In their room, Vincent pulled Rose close, kissing her with the passion and tenderness that had only grown stronger over the years of their marriage. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. I love you too," Rose whispered back. "Forever." The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and celebrations. Samuel grew into a fine young man with his father's work ethic and his mother's compassion. He took to ranching naturally, and Vincent began teaching him the intricacies of horse breeding and training. Elizabeth was a spirited child who kept both her parents on their toes. but she had a gift with numbers that Rose encouraged, teaching her daughter to manage the ranch's books. In 1887, Rose gave birth to their third child, another boy they named William. He was a quiet, thoughtful child who loved to read and often could be found sitting in the barn, reading stories to the horses. Vincent built him a small library in the house, filling it with books from the catalog, and William spent hours there, lost in other worlds. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. By 1890, Vincent employed 5 full-time hands and had a reputation throughout the Dakota Territory as the best horse breeder in the region. Politicians and businessmen came to him for their mounts, and the Keller Ranch became known as a place of quality and integrity. Rose's work with abused women also expanded. The Safe House in Yankton had helped dozens of women escape violent situations, and Rose's advocacy had led to small but significant changes in how the law treated domestic violence cases. She gave speeches at churches and community gatherings, sharing her story and encouraging other women to speak up and seek help. Through it all, Vincent and Rose remained each other's constant support and greatest love. They still sat by the fire every night, talking and dreaming together. They still stole moments alone when they could, escaping to their favorite spot by the creek where they had first told each other they loved one another. They still looked at each other across a crowded room and smiled, sharing a connection that went deeper than words. In 1895, 17 years after they had met, Vincent organized a special anniversary celebration. He took Rose back to the barn where he had found her hiding that night, which he had cleaned and decorated with lanterns and wildflowers. "What is this?" Rose asked, looking around in wonder. "This is where our story began," Vincent said, taking her hands. 17 years ago, I came into this barn expecting nothing more than the usual evening chores, and instead, I found the love of my life hiding in the loft. That moment changed everything for me, Rose. It set me on a path I never expected but would not change for anything. I wanted to mark the anniversary of that night by telling you again how much I love you and how grateful I am that you trusted me enough to stay." Tears streamed down Rose's face as she pulled Vincent into a kiss. "I was so scared that night," she said when they broke apart. "I thought my life was over. But you saw past the fear and the bruises to the person I was underneath. You gave me back my life, my sense of self. Every happy moment I have had since that night exists because you chose to help me instead of turning me away." "You did the hard work," Vincent said. "You had the courage to leave, the strength to stand up to Thomas, and the resilience to heal and build a new life. I just provided a safe space for you to do it." "You provided so much more than that," Rose said. "You provided love and partnership and a real home. You showed me what a good man looks like. Our children are growing up knowing they are loved and valued because of the example you set every day. You are an incredible husband and father, Vincent Keller." They renewed their vows that night in the barn, speaking words of love and commitment by lantern light. It was just the two of them. No witnesses needed, but the promises they made were as binding as any spoken in a church. They pledged to continue building their life together, to face whatever challenges came with unity and love, and to never take for granted the gift they had been given in finding each other. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Rose looked up at the stars scattered across the Dakota sky. "Do you think we would have found each other if things had been different?" she asked. "If I had not been running from Thomas, if I had not hidden in your barn that night?" "I like to think we would have," Vincent said. "Maybe not in the same way, but I believe some people are meant to find each other. We were two lonely souls looking for home, and we found it in each other. The how does not matter as much as the fact that we did find each other, and we chose to build something beautiful together." "I like that thought," Rose said, squeezing his hand. The years rolled on, bringing both joys and sorrows as all lives do. In 1898, Vincent's last surviving brother wrote from Missouri, having finally tracked Vincent down after years of searching. They began a correspondence that brought Vincent a sense of closure about his past and introduced Rose and the children to family they had never known existed. Samuel married in 1900, bringing home a kind young woman named Margaret who fit into the family as if she had always been there. They settled on a portion of the ranch that Vincent deeded to them, building their own house and starting their own herd. 2 years later, they gave Vincent and Rose their first grandchild, a little girl they named Rose after her grandmother. Holding his granddaughter for the first time, Vincent was overwhelmed with emotion. This tiny perfect person was the continuation of the legacy he and Rose had built together, proof that love and perseverance could overcome even the darkest circumstances. Elizabeth followed her brother into marriage in 1903, choosing a schoolteacher from Sioux City who supported her continued education and encouraged her sharp mind. They moved to the city, where Elizabeth eventually opened a bookkeeping firm, one of the first in the region run by a woman. Vincent and Rose were immensely proud of their daughter's independence and success. William, their youngest, surprised everyone by announcing he wanted to become a lawyer. He had been profoundly affected by his mother's advocacy work and wanted to change the laws that failed to protect women and children. Vincent and Rose supported his ambition wholeheartedly, helping him attend law school in Chicago. He graduated at the top of his class and returned to South Dakota, where he built a practice focused on helping those who could not afford legal representation. By 1910, Vincent was in his early 50s and Rose her late 40s. Their children were grown and building their own lives, but they remained close, gathering at the ranch for holidays and special occasions. The ranch was now one of the most successful in the territory, a testament to decades of hard work and careful management. One evening, as they celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary with their children, and growing number of grandchildren gathered around the table, Vincent looked at Rose and felt his heart swell with gratitude and love. The woman who had whispered, "Please don't send me back," in his barn all those years ago had become the center of his universe, his partner in every sense of the word, and the mother of his children. After dinner, when the family had moved to the porch to enjoy the summer evening, Rose pulled Vincent aside. "Come with me," she said mysteriously, leading him toward the barn. Inside, she had set up lanterns just as he had done for their 17th anniversary. "I wanted to return the gesture," she said. "This barn represents the beginning of everything good in my life. I wanted to stand here with you and remember where we started and celebrate where we are now." "We have built a good life," Vincent said, looking around at the barn that had been expanded and improved over the years but still retained its essential character. "We have built an extraordinary life," Rose corrected. "Against all odds, despite all the obstacles, we found each other and created something beautiful. We raised 3 incredible children who are now raising children of their own. We built a successful business. We have made a difference in our community. And through it all, we have loved each other deeply and truly. Not everyone gets that, Vincent. We are blessed." "We are," Vincent agreed. He pulled Rose into his arms, holding her close. "I would not change a single thing about our journey together. Every challenge we faced made us stronger. Every obstacle we overcame brought us closer. You are the love of my life, Rose Keller, and I thank God every day that you chose to hide in my barn that night instead of someone else's." Rose laughed, the sound pure and joyful. "It was divine intervention, I think, or fate, or just pure luck. Whatever it was, I am grateful for it. I am grateful for you and for the life we have built, and for every moment we have spent together." They stood in the barn for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, listening to the sounds of their family laughing and talking on the porch. This was what it was all about, Vincent realized. Not the size of the ranch or the success of the business, but these moments of connection and love. The family they had created, the home they had built, the life they had chosen together. As they finally walked back to the house to rejoin their family, Vincent felt a profound sense of peace. The scared woman hiding in his barn and the lonely cowboy who found her had come so far together. They had faced down violence and fear and built something lasting and true in its place. Their love story had started in darkness, but had bloomed into something bright and beautiful that would continue through their children and grandchildren for generations to come. "I love you," Vincent said as they climbed the porch steps, speaking the words he said every day but never tired of saying. "I love you too," Rose replied, as she did every time, meaning it as deeply as she had the first time she spoke those words. They rejoined their family, settling into chairs surrounded by the people they loved most in the world. The evening air was warm, filled with the sounds of children playing and adults talking and laughing. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. This was home, Vincent thought. Not just the physical place, but this feeling of belonging, of being exactly where you were meant to be with exactly who you were meant to be with. He had found it all those years ago when he opened his barn door and found a terrified woman begging not to be sent back to her abuser. And every day since, he and Rose had worked together to build and protect and nurture this home they had created. As the evening wore on and children were carried to bed and adult children said their goodnights, Vincent and Rose were finally alone again. They sat on the porch swing, gently rocking, Rose's head on Vincent's shoulder and his arm around her waist. "Tell me something," Rose said softly. "If you could go back to that night, knowing everything that would happen, all the challenges we would face, would you still invite me into your house? Would you still choose this path?" "In a heartbeat," Vincent said without hesitation. "Every challenge was worth it. Every obstacle led us here." "I would choose you every single time, Rose, in this life and any other." Rose tilted her head up and kissed him, a sweet, gentle kiss that still held all the passion and promise of their early days together. "Good answer," she said with a smile, "because I would choose you too, every single time." They sat on the porch until the moon rose high and the night grew cool, neither wanting to break the spell of the moment. Finally, Rose yawned and Vincent helped her to her feet. "Come on," he said. "Let's go to bed. We have another day of this beautiful life waiting for us tomorrow." They climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the same room they had shared for 32 years. Vincent helped Rose out of her dress, his hands as gentle and reverent as they had been on their wedding night. She helped him with his boots and shirt, their movements familiar and comfortable after so many years together. In bed, they curled together as they always did, Rose's back against Vincent's chest, his arm draped over her waist. "Good night, my love," she whispered. "Good night, Rose," Vincent replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Sweet dreams." As sleep claimed them, Vincent's last thought was one of profound gratitude. He had been given a second chance at life and love when Rose stumbled into his barn that night, and he had spent every day since making the most of that gift. Their story had started with fear and desperation, but had transformed into something beautiful beyond measure. And tomorrow, they would wake up and continue writing their story together, one day at a time, for as long as they both lived. The years continued their steady march, bringing changes but never diminishing the love between Vincent and Rose. They grew older together, their hair turning gray and then white, their hands becoming gnarled from years of work, but their bond only deepened with time. They celebrated 50 years of marriage in 1928, surrounded by 3 children, 10 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. On their 50th anniversary, Samuel gave a speech honoring his parents. "My father once told me that the best thing he ever did was open his barn door one night and choose compassion over indifference," Samuel said, his voice thick with emotion. "My mother chose courage over despair." Together, they showed us all what real love looks like. Not the fairy tale kind, but the kind that works and fights and perseveres. The kind that builds homes and raises children and makes the world a little bit better. We are all blessed to be part of the legacy they created. Vincent looked at Rose, saw tears streaming down her weathered face, and felt his own eyes sting. They had done it. Against all odds, they had built a life worth celebrating, a love worth commemorating, and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. As the party wound down and the family slowly departed, Vincent and Rose found themselves alone once more in the house they had shared for 5 decades. The ranch had been turned over to Samuel years ago, with Vincent and Rose transitioning into a well-earned retirement, but they still lived in the same house where they had raised their children. 50 years, Rose said wonderingly. "How did we get here so fast?" "One day at a time," Vincent said, echoing what had become their life philosophy. "One moment, one choice, one act of love at a time." "Do you remember that first night?" Rose asked. "When you found me in the barn?" "Like it was yesterday," Vincent said. "You were so scared, so small and vulnerable, but even then I could see the strength in you. You had survived so much already, I just gave you a safe place to heal." "You gave me everything," Rose said. "A home, a family, a life worth living. I never could have imagined that the worst night of my life would lead to all this happiness. But it did, because of you. Because of us," Vincent corrected. "We did this together." They sat together as they had thousands of times before, comfortable in the silence that comes from knowing someone so completely that words are sometimes unnecessary. Outside, the Dakota wind whistled through the prairie grass, a sound that had been the soundtrack of their entire life together. Vincent passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1932, at the age of 74, with Rose holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you," spoken to the woman who had been his partner for 54 years. Rose grieved deeply but without regret, knowing they had lived a full and beautiful life together. She remained on the ranch, surrounded by family, for another 8 years before she too passed away in 1940 at the age of 82. Her children and grandchildren were with her at the end, and her last words echoed Vincent's. "I love you all. Tell Vincent I am coming home." They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, their headstones simple but inscribed with the words that had defined their life. "Together always." The ranch continued to thrive under Samuel's management and eventually passed to his children. The house Vincent and Rose built was carefully maintained, becoming a touchstone for the family, a place where they gathered to remember and celebrate the love story that had started it all. Years later, when great-great-grandchildren asked about the couple in the old photographs, they were told the story of how a cowboy found a woman hiding in his barn, how she whispered, "Please don't send me back," and how he chose compassion over convenience. They were told about the courage it took to stand up to an abuser, the strength required to build a new life, and the love that sustained them through 54 years of marriage. It became a family legend, passed down through generations, the story of Vincent and Rose, whose love had started in fear and desperation, but had blossomed into something beautiful and lasting. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is hope for redemption and happiness, that love can heal even the deepest wounds, and that one act of kindness can change the course of multiple lives. The barn where Rose had hidden that first night still stood a century later, preserved by the family as a monument to where it all began. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind whistled just right across the prairie, family members swore they could feel the presence of Vincent and Rose, still together, still in love, watching over the legacy they had created. Their story was complete, their ending happy and fulfilled, their love eternal. From that desperate whisper in a dark barn to 54 years of marriage and a family spanning generations, Vincent and Rose had proven that love, real love, can overcome any obstacle and create something beautiful that lasts forever.